This would definitely be one of the most shocking cases I've ever worked on.
Maybe she is being held as a slave, in a cage. I need to know where Laura is. I was in fear for Laura's life.
I had my children there around him, and to think that we all could have been victims. Oh my gosh.
This is a person who has refused to take real responsibility for being the predator that he is.
Stephen Mark Zelich was born on October 29, 1961, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. His father, a police sergeant, influenced Zelich's eventual career in law enforcement. In 1984, while still studying criminal justice at the University of Wisconsin, Zelich applied to become an officer at the Mequon Police Department, a city north of Milwaukee with a population of 25,000 people. In his application, he expressed a sincere desire to help others as his motivation for joining the police force. Throughout his 5 years in the Mequon PD, Zelich was respected by his peers while his supervisors commended his hard work and dedication. He was also well liked in the local community for being kind and respectful. This developed a sense of pride in the young officer, leading him to seek a bigger role in a larger city. In 1989, he transferred to the West Allis Police Department, serving a population of 60,000. Despite his eagerness to perform well, Zelich struggled in his new role and environment. He lagged behind his colleagues and often received reprimands for his low arrest records and few citations issued. Furthermore, his peers viewed him as unmotivated and lacking initiative. The criticism demotivated Zelich, and eventually, he stopped striving for his former excellence. Instead, he lashed out at supervisors and responded to reprimands with insubordination, rash decision-making, and lying. From 1993 to 1995, he was involved in 3 unreported crashes in his squad car. He also took long breaks and failed to respond to backup requests from fellow officers. In one instance, his negligence in arresting a domestic violence suspect resulted in the victim ending up in critical condition. Despite receiving suspensions for these incidents, the errant cop's behavior worsened. While on duty, he frequented gentlemen's clubs under the guise of business checks. Instead, he watched shows for hours. Even worse, he hounded the dancers for dates even after they rejected him. When 3 women reported him to the police, he got banned from the clubs. Despite this, he waited outside, followed the dancers, and conducted bogus traffic stops to obtain their personal information. This behavior went on from 1999 to 2000, with the women now too fearful to report him because he knew where they live. As a result, his department was unaware that his behavior had persisted until things escalated. In May 2001, Zelich solicited a woman's services, giving her an advance of $125 for a private dance without disclosing his true intentions. When he brought out handcuffs, the alarmed woman questioned his motives, angering Zelich. In a fit of rage, he slammed her to the floor and choked her. He then coerced her into agreeing to certain acts. However, once he let go of her to get a glass of water, the woman managed to escape, banging on the doors of neighboring apartments and asking them to call the police. When law enforcement arrived, the woman narrated the ordeal. However, she was surprised when the police arrested her instead of the attacker. Apparently, she had open warrants for traffic violations and solicitation. And, to make matters worse, Zelich accused her of stealing $125 from him, which he explained caused his violent reaction. After further investigation, however, police became skeptical when the evidence at the scene contradicted Zelich's story but was aligned with the woman's report. Because of this, the man was sanctioned with a 20-day suspension. An internal investigation was also launched into his questionable behavior towards women. Unfortunately, his intimidation persisted despite the disciplinary action. Finally, when 2 more women reported him, his supervisors had enough of his misconduct and issued an ultimatum that he would be terminated unless he changed. Worried that the ongoing investigation might lead to criminal charges, Zelich resigned in August 2001. As a result, the department dropped the inquiry, and no cases were filed against him. None of the women pursued the matter, knowing they were up against a police officer. Unemployed, Zelich turned to selling prepaid legal services and cell phone contracts. In 2002, he inherited $250,000 from his late father, which he used to start real estate and mortgage lending businesses. However, these ventures failed, leaving him in debt and facing lawsuits from creditors. Lonely and financially ruined, Zelich sought to regain control and power. He turned to the internet to seek human connection, discovering he could intimidate women online without consequences. As time went on, He realized that the anonymity online also allowed him to explore his most private and darkest desires, leading him to join social networking sites that indulged his fantasies. In 2004, at 43 years old, Zelich began searching for submissive women. However, it wouldn't be until 2009 that he would meet his perfect subject. Between those years, he fostered a friendly relationship with Jamie Bates, who moved into his apartment with her 2 children in 2006. The woman and her kids provided Zelich with much-needed companionship. During this time, the former police officer started working as a security guard, seemingly regaining control of his life. However, this stability was short-lived. In August 2007, a horrified Jamie discovered suspicious tools and a large dog cage in Zelich's basement.
He had said that he kept a girl for 7 years in his apartment in this crate, this cage, and he would leave her in there during the day when he went to work as a police officer.
Despite not confirming if these claims were true, Jamie became uncomfortable living with the man and immediately left with her children. Unlike his past behavior, Zelich did not pursue her. Instead, he immersed himself deeper into his online pursuits, adopting the name Mr. Handcuffs on particular websites. In 2009, he began communicating with Jenny Gamez from Oregon. Jenny grew up in the foster care system and had trouble early in life when she became pregnant and had to give up the child to its father. She initially considered Zelich's proposal of a submissive relationship but reconsidered when positive developments happened in her life. She was doing well in school and was granted a 2-year scholarship to a community college. However, when the woman found herself reeling again in 2012, she turned to Zelich for comfort. This time, she accepted his proposal to submit completely to him. In August 2012, Jenny deleted her social media accounts and told friends that she was moving away to live with a family member. Zelich then picked her up from the airport and took her to a hotel in Kenosha County instead of his apartment. They spent the weekend fulfilling Zelich's desires. Before leaving, the unsatiated man convinced Jenny to try another deviant activity. This involved Zelich controlling her breathing as he watched her struggle. However, the pair did not discuss safety precautions before their act, so Jenny couldn't do anything to stop the man. Soon, her lifeless form fell to the ground. Even with his training in emergency response, Zelich did not attempt to revive the woman nor did he call for help. Instead, he emptied Jenny's luggage and stuffed her inside. He then brought her home and stored her inside the refrigerator. For 2 years, Zelich's compulsions remained dormant, with the frozen body serving as a reminder of what it felt like to have complete control over someone. However, when the body began to decompose and become unrecognizable, Zelich became restless. In 2013, he returned to websites looking for his next victim. Over the years, he developed an instinct for identifying the most vulnerable and the easiest to manipulate. He targeted lonely women seeking companionship online, promising them an escape from their problems. His profile picture on his accounts was of his younger self with an earnest smile, making it seem that the man behind Mr. Handcuffs was harmless and trustworthy. This image appealed to Laura Simonson, a 37-year-old divorced mother of 8 from Farmington, Minnesota. Laura, who had a history of mental health issues and had lost custody of her children, was going through a difficult period following her daughter's passing. She turned to certain websites to escape her harsh reality, making her a perfect fit for the evil man's plans. When they started messaging in September 2013, Zelich wasted no time and expressed his desire to keep her in permanent confinement with no expectation of release. Surprisingly, Laura agreed, so he sent her a list of tasks to complete before they could meet, including removing all body hair, painting her nails in his favorite shade of pink, selling all belongings, liquidating properties, and deleting social media accounts. On Saturday, November 2, 2013, Laura left a note for her mother, apologizing for her actions and informing her that she would be going away. She then abandoned her van outside her mother's home as Zelich picked her up. An hour into their 5-hour trip to his apartment, the man proposed they stay in a hotel for the night and ended up at Microtel in Suites in Rochester, Minnesota. With the man watching her from a distance, Laura filled out the forms to check in. Unaware of her companion's devious plan, they spent the night together, and when Sunday came, Zelich initiated the same act he'd done to Jenny. Once he had Laura under his control, Zelich enjoyed the sight of her helplessness until her body went slack. Realizing she was dead, Zelich placed her in a suitcase and checked out of the hotel. With no room left in his refrigerator, he kept Laura in the trunk of his vehicle, relying on the freezing winter temperatures to slow down its decomposition. Zelich went about his life, confident he had gotten away with another murder. However, unlike Jenny, whose disappearance went unreported because her family and friends assumed she had been busy with college, Laura's family reported her missing to the Farmington police on November 22, 2013. This was after her friend Jeff left them a note that he was concerned about her sudden disappearance. Initially, the authorities didn't consider the case urgent, as Laura was an adult who had stated her intention to leave. However, when they found her cell phone and bank card in her abandoned van on November 25, they were convinced something was wrong and immediately began an investigation. They questioned her ex-husband due to the history of violence in their marriage but found no reason to suspect his involvement. Meanwhile, Jeff, who had access to her website accounts, discovered her exchanges with Mr. Handcuffs and shared this information with the detective. Alarmed by the possibility of Laura being held by a dangerous individual, the police released an all-points bulletin to nearby law enforcement agencies, hospitals, and hotels, alerting them of the missing woman's possible precarious situation. 2 days later, they received a call from the hotel where Laura and Zelich had stayed. The desk manager recognized Laura from the flyers and provided information about their stay. He didn't want to sign himself in at the hotel and leave a record of his name there. He paid cash. I looked at the records later. There were 27 guests at that hotel in Rochester, Minnesota that night. He was the only one that paid cash. Additionally, the video footage from their check-in had been overwritten, while Laura was nowhere to be found on the footage of the day the man checked out. With the investigation going nowhere, Jeff searched for the person behind Mr. Handcuffs. He scoured over different websites until fortunately, he found an email address linked to the username. The online trail led him to the name Stephen Zelich. With this breakthrough, a detective conducted a background search and reached out to the police department in West Allis upon learning that Zelich used to be one of their own. In January 2014, West Allis officers questioned the potential suspect at his apartment. He admitted to chatting with Laura online but denied meeting her in person or having any involvement in her disappearance. Confident he wouldn't be discovered, Zelich even provided a DNA sample to the investigators. He also let authorities search his computer, knowing he had installed software to periodically erase data. With nothing but their online conversations tying him to Laura, the investigators had no choice but to leave empty-handed. A few months later, as winter ended and temperatures rose, Zelich's neighbors began complaining about awful smells and the increased presence of flies and maggots in the apartment complex. With no choice, Zelich placed Jenny's body in a suitcase and stored it in his vehicle alongside Laura's remains. He tried to hold on to them for as long as possible, but when summer came and the stench inside his vehicle became unbearable, even drawing the attention of his co-workers, Zelich was forced to dispose of the bodies. On June 4, 2014, he drove to Geneva, Wisconsin, a quiet town 40 minutes away from West Allis. He stopped on a part of the North Como Road without streetlights and hurriedly dumped the 2 suitcases with Laura and Jenny's bodies into a ditch. Back home, Zelich felt agitated by the loss of his possessions and immediately went online to arrange the captivity of his next potential victim, a woman named Petra, who he had been talking to since the start of that summer. However, his plans would soon be derailed as a pair of highway workers discovered the decomposing bodies in the suitcases and alerted the sheriff's office on June 5. Officers worried that there might be more bodies and that a serial killer may be on the loose, prompting them to send out an alert to different police departments throughout the Midwest. Leads soon poured in, allowing investigators to identify one of the victims quickly. We were able to identify Laura Simonson very quickly. We had a high degree of certainty who she was within 24 hours because of the tattoos that were on her body, and plus there was a missing persons report that was already generated because she was reported missing. The other victim's identity was more challenging due to the body's advanced state of decomposition and the lack of a missing persons report to point detectives in the right direction. Because of this, authorities sent out a sketch to the public based on the mummified corpse, hoping that someone could identify her. Meanwhile, investigators caught a break when DNA from the ropes found on the women matched the sample Zelich had provided. On June 25, 2014, Authorities brought Zelich in for questioning. When informed about the discovery of the bodies and his DNA on the ropes, the officers were surprised when the man nonchalantly recounted how he killed the women and hid their remains. However, his narration described their deaths as unintentional and a result of consensual rough lovemaking gone wrong instead of a planned attempt. Because of this, the court could only charge him on 2 counts of hiding a corpse when they arrested him on June 27, 2014. To build a case for the women's murder, authorities continued with their investigation. They searched the suspect's home and secured evidence, including the refrigerator where the body was stored and a bag of tools. Soon, Jenny's family and friends recognized her based on the police's composite sketch, noticing unique features that matched the missing woman. Then, on June 30, 2014, dental records positively confirmed that the other victim was Jenny Gamez. As authorities pieced together what happened to the women, Zelich's defense that they died accidentally became more unlikely. Investigators questioned the similar pattern leading to the women's deaths, as well as the suspect's lack of initiative to revive the victims and ask for help. With these, Zelich was charged with the murder of Jenny Gamez and Laura Simonson in the counties where the crime had been committed. Before he could stand trial, however, Zelich took a plea deal and confessed guilt on January 25, 2016, to first-degree reckless homicide for Jenny's passing. He was sentenced to 35 years in prison. In February 2017, he also pleaded guilty to second-degree murder for his crime against Laura Simonson and was sentenced to 25 years in prison, which he will serve after his first sentence. Finally, in October 2017 in Wisconsin, Stephen Zelich was handed an additional 10-year sentence for the crime of hiding the women's bodies. What that means, because these are all consecutive sentences, is Mr. Zelich will never get out of prison, and we're all safer because of that. For the families whose loved ones were taken away by the devious man, their tragic story serves as a warning of the predators that could lurk in online communities meant to be safe spaces for people to explore. It highlights the importance of background checks and establishing a safe, controlled environment before indulging in possibly risky activities. The case of Stephen Zelich is an example of how people in positions of power can take advantage of their mandate, especially if left unchecked by institutions whose job is to look after the welfare of the people. Despite years of misconduct as a police officer, Zelich was able to keep his record clean while evading heavy sanctions. This allowed him to escalate his troubled behavior, thinking he could get away with it. He didn't just hurt me or my mom or a single person. He hurt a whole entire family. She had kids. She had a life. She had so much planned. And he just took that away from her without even thinking about it. And he wasn't even sorry about it. He just needs to go away, forever.